And we're back once again. Good evening, folks. Welcome to Friday Night Tech Talk. I'm Mobile Geezer, which you know if you're watching me on YouTube on my channel, but you could be watching me on Facebook, either at Mobile Geezer or George Hayes. I simulcast all three every week. And if you're new here, we are glad to have you. First one in was Eleanor. Nobody else has checked in yet. Of course, always glad to have her here. One of the most faithful we've got. And if you're new, please type something in the comments. Let us know where you're from. Feel free to chat in the comments on any story that I discuss here and any article that I pull up. And if you're new, we do this every week. I pick some tech articles that I think will be interesting to other tech heads, or assume if you're here, you're somewhat of a tech head like myself. If there's a big event, I try to get an article up about that and we talk about that. Other than that, I try to come up with interesting stories that you're probably not going to see everywhere else. So as I do every week, I'll show you where the show notes are on my website. So let me go share screen. And if you want to follow along and click on the articles and go through them with me, you can follow me here. Now, you can either scan the QR code that's up here, and that will take you straight to the show notes just for tonight's. But other than that, let me get my, okay. If you go to mobilegeezer.wordpress.com and just click on today's date, you'll get just the show notes for tonight's show. Now, as I do every week, I'll go over the stories we're going to go over as a little preview. But once we do that, I'm going to do a quick article that I didn't include, and I told Mike and Will that I would. Oh, we got Brian. All right, Brian, you're right behind Elmer. Two of the most faithful there is. Glad you're here. He says, have a great weekend, Elmore. So I'm going to go through the preview as I do every week, but I told Mike and Will the other day that I would include this kind of fascinating article out of London. It's just a quick little one, but I'll do that one first. But first, we'll do our usual little preview. So, and as far as I know, there was no big events this week. You let me know if I'm wrong. Always interested for anybody to tell me what I've missed. So, first story. AirDrop works from Pixel 10 phones to iPhone. Supposedly, it'll be coming for other Android phones, but there's a kink in there. That's why I said, will Apple shut it down? Yes, Google got this to work, but they didn't inform Apple, so Apple could shut it down. But we'll check out the story. That was on Android Central. After that, of course, we had the big Cloudflare outage, and I did a video about that. And before that, we had the Microsoft Azure outage, and before that, we had the AWS outage, and before that, a couple of months before that, we had the Google Cloud outage. So they're becoming pretty regular. I just said our websites worldwide suddenly more vulnerable or more susceptible to crashes. And I said, actually, no, according to this Mashable article, but we'll go over it. Then the Android Authority did a poll, consumer poll response. Material 3 expressive or liquid glass? Because last week I should give you a story where so many of the Android phones are copying liquid glass from iPhone, but the overwhelming result in this group was they tell you highly which one they prefer. So we'll go over that in the Android Authority article. And then again, just thought this was interesting. Meta's chief AI scientist is leaving after 12 years to embark on his own venture. So I guess he's considered one of the godfathers of AI. So at 12 years, he's been doing it a while. Then the MacBook Air M1, the original M1 MacBook Air from 2020, had a 5-year anniversary. And that's the MacBook Air that I have. So this guy wrote a nice article about it. He was there from the beginning. So I just thought that was an interesting one to show you guys. And last but not least, we've had encryption articles over and over for 6-7 months now, with so many governments wanting backdoors into things and wanting to break encryption. With encryption becoming a hotter and hotter topic, 61 worldwide tech organizations ask governments to protect it. So will governments listen? I tend to doubt it, because all the governments, doesn't matter what kind of government it is, they all want to see what we're doing. But anyway, just an interesting article, and at least people are putting pressure on the governments to cut it out. And there are a few officials on the side of those of us who want to keep our stuff private. So those are the ones we'll go over. But as I told you, we're going to do a quick story. Let me jump over there. Okay, let me stop this one and let me share screen. I've got a quick one that I just thought was kind of fascinating. Mike had sent this one to me. So this was on Android Police. Uh-oh. What? I'm not following.
Why is that not?
I have no idea. No, it's fine here.
I don't know.
Well, at least you can follow the show, right?
That's weird.
Just Eleanor checking something with me. Why things aren't displaying properly on her phone. Anyway, got this article that I thought was kind of fascinating. Mike sent it to me. Thieves are hilariously turning down Android devices. This is kind of funny. It's a very quick one. But I did tell Mike and Will I would include this. Oh, and I did check to see if Ted would be joining us. I had nothing from him, so I'll let you know if he does. So this was written 2 days ago by Matthew Mountjoy. The notion that Android let's drop it into read view, sorry. Come on. Okay. The notion that Android devices are worth less than iPhones is an old one. Still, smartphone thieves apparently don't share the same view. And I think they mean they do share that view, but you'll see what I mean. As UK residents are reporting that thieves are returning their Samsung devices after stealing them. This is hilarious. Now, keep in mind, this is in UK, and this is, I guess, mostly in London. To add some context, smartphone theft is becoming increasingly common. Oh, and I think I know why that showed up on Eleanor's phone the way it did. Let's see if I shut it off. Let me see something. No, that's not it. StreamYard included something new, and it shows you here. I'm seeing what you would see if you're watching from a computer, and I'm also seeing what you would see if you're watching from a phone. And Eleanor, I think, is getting the phone one. So I think maybe if I hide that preview, I'm not sure if she'll see just the normal one that she sees, but she was seeing what you would see on the phone. But this is something, okay, Eleanor says it's okay now. So it's something new that StreamYard included last week, and I totally forgot about it. But so I guess now she's seeing it the same way I'm seeing it, which is the way you see it on the computer. Okay, back to our article. To add some context, smartphone theft is becoming increasingly common in the UK. Yeah, I guess more so than here, as the Metropolitan Police in London, get this, reported that 117,211 mobile devices were stolen in 2024. That's a lot of devices in a year, I think, which is almost 2,000 more thefts than occurred in 2023. While the Metropolitan Police don't track the models of stolen phones, there are other sources that show which ones thieves prefer. So somebody is tracking which ones thieves prefer. And I guess this is mostly tracked by London Centric. According to a feature from the London Centric, a Londoner named Sam was pickpocketed by a group of 8 men who took his camera, his Samsung, and his beanie, of all things. I don't know why. However, in a surprising twist, one of the thieves turned around and handed Sam back his device, uttering a few words before leaving, "Don't want no Samsung." That's hilarious to me. Not that the guy got it stolen, but they didn't even want it. The London Centric also featured a man named Mark, whose phone was swiped by a thief on an e-bike. Mark tried to give chase, but of course, probably aren't going to outrun an e-bike, but lost him. Though he saw the thief stop to look at Mark's Samsung Galaxy and then toss it onto the street. Mark was fortunately able to retrieve his phone, which did not sustain any damage, but he did tell the London Centric that he felt a bit rejected. "My poor phone," he said. So I guess if it's not an iPhone, they don't want it. But I mean, it's nice that they let, especially the first guy, just turned and gave it back to the guy. Experts from cybersecurity firm ESET, interviewed by the London-based publication, noticed that the disdain for Samsung devices is likely due to the iPhone's higher resale value. So they just mentioned Samsung, but I guess they don't want Android phones. Apple devices have a higher secondhand market value, and it makes more economic sense to pursue these more sought-after phones rather than cheaper models with a lower secondhand price. Can you imagine how low it must be if they don't even want to try to sell it? Jake Moore, an analyst at ESET, told the London Centric. So I just thought that was a hilarious little story. And then the number of stolen phones in 2024 amazed me. Anyway, I just thought that was a huge number. And it's just funny that they don't even want a Samsung phone. They just give them back to the people. Yeah, Brian says the thieves only want iPhone. That seems to be how it is. I would assume it's the same here, but this is strictly from London, but it's just hilarious. So you can thank Mike for sending that to us. Oh, and before I get back into the other stories, let me stop this one. As we usually do on Black Friday, next week, Mike is going to host the show as he usually does on Black Friday. So next week, 8 p.m. Eastern, it's going to be on Mike's Simply Your Device channel. Now, I will do a post during the week on my channel to remind you guys. I'll probably do one Sunday night to remind you guys, and another one on probably Wednesday. But as for now, just take it that it's going to be on Mike's Simply My Device channel next Friday instead of the Mobile Geezer channel, as we do. We've been doing this every year for a few years now. So if anything changes, I'll let you guys know. Now, if anything does change, because Mike has been having some family issues, if you go to Simply Your Device channel next week at 8 o'clock and Mike isn't there, probably come right back over here, because that will probably mean that I've got it. and that would have happened at the last minute. But as far as I know, Black Friday will be on Mike's Simply Your Device channel. So I want you to know that. I'll announce it again at the end of the show. So we'll finish with the funny article for the first one. So now we'll go back to our regular stories. And of course, if Ted joins us, I will certainly let you guys know. We've been a few weeks without Ted, so we're missing him. So let me share screen again. Go back to my website. Okay. Wait a minute. What am I doing wrong here? I'm doing something wrong. All right, let's try it again. Share screen. Here we go. Okay. There we go. All right, so we're back to my website, mobilegeezer.wordpress.com, and our first story. AirDrop works. This was kind of fascinating. From Pixel 10 phones to iPhones. This is on Android Central. And I just said, well, Apple shut it down because Google did this without telling Apple, but it does work. One of the guys on Android Authority actually showed it in a video. So it's pretty easy to do. QuickShare teams up with AirDrop. How Google solved the file sharing divide. This was by Nicholas Diaz, published yesterday. It's like the big RCS push between Android and iPhone, but for your files. Let's drop it into Reader View. And lately, I've been going back and forth between this Reader View, which is our regular Reader View, and the darker one. But this one seems to be the better one to me, so we'll stick with this one. Okay, Google announces a major update that's starting to roll out for its Pixel phones and Apple's iPhones that makes file sharing even easier. Announced this morning, this would have been yesterday, Google states
Google's QuickShare now works with Apple's AirDrop, allowing seamless
I
two-way
didn't ask you anything, Gemini. Okay. Announced this morning, Google states that it's preparing an update for its Pixel 10 series that makes it possible for Android's file sharing app QuickShare to work with Apple's AirDrop. Once this arrives, and I haven't even tried it on mine, I do have my Pixel 10 with me today, and my other phone that was my main phone is my Galaxy Z Flip FE. But I'm assuming it's going to work on mine, and I didn't bring my iPhone today. Once this arrives, when tapping QuickShare to send the file to another phone, users with a Pixel 10 should begin to pick up iPhones. So right now, it only works on Pixel 10. This new capability is said to work vice versa as well. So I guess you can go either way. Though these are different, even competitive devices on different operating systems, Google said it built this capability with security at its core, which is a good thing. The company states it has tested its strong safeguards with independent security experts to ensure that the data you're sending between devices remains protected. It's worth mentioning that so long as your Android device and iPhone are prepared to receive files from others, this QuickShare AirDrop update will work seamlessly. So you have to go in and prepare it. It's pretty easy to do, though. Moreover, Google says this won't stay a Pixel 10 exclusive ability. So they're going to do it with other Android phones too, I gather. The post states that the company will look to improve how QuickShare and AirDrop function alongside one another, as well as looking to offer this update to more Android devices. There's no timeline set for this just yet, so it's unclear how long other phones will be waiting. My guess is they're probably waiting to see if Apple does anything about it, because I gather they didn't even let them know they were doing this. Android and iOS look like the best of friends. This update should begin rolling out today. This was yesterday, November 20th, for the devices involved, so keep your eyes peeled for it. This is, in essence, a major update for how Android and iOS, Google, and Apple work with one another following the whole RCS situation. Last September, Apple started rolling out RCS on its iPhones to iOS 18. This update finally brought read receipt, sharper photos, and an overall well-improved chatting experience between iPhones and the Android devices that previously leveraged the old clunky SMS standard. And a lot of people were very happy about that. This was everything Google was fighting for in its Get the Message campaign, even if it had nothing to do with its implementation in the end, because in the end, Apple had to implement it. However, it wasn't until earlier this year that iPhones got the E2EE end-to-end encryption side of that RCS update, which is really what we're all here for. The GSM Association announced that the new RCS Universal Profile 3.0, which brought encryption to RCS. So I guess they had it working, but the encryption just started earlier this year. While this might seem strange since Google Messages has encryption, RCS never had encryption levels like that. That I didn't know. Google was the one that implemented it for users. Now with the RCS standard as a whole adopting stronger protections for user messages, everyone can get in on it, including Apple's iPhones. So that was just a quick one. But you can now share with QuickShare to AirDrop from your Android to your iPhone, and I gather the other way also. So not very hard to do. So kind of exciting stuff. Bringing Android and iPhone closer and closer, as long as Apple doesn't shut it down, which I guess they could. It probably wouldn't be a very popular thing for them to do. So along with RCS, as they said, this is kind of exciting stuff. All right, nothing else new in the comments, and nobody has joined us yet. So, second story. And like I said, I gave you the Cloudflare update separately, and that was our fourth big one this year. So I just said, our websites worldwide suddenly more vulnerable or more susceptible to crashes? Actually, no. And I got this article on Mashable. Let's check it out. Why does the internet keep crashing so often? First Google Cloud, then AWS, now Cloudflare, and can't forget Microsoft Azure. There's a reason so many websites and platforms keep going down at the same time. Yeah, we're all tied into too much of this stuff. All right, let's go into reader view. Sometimes it won't do that. Get this out of here. Okay, now I think we can go into reader view. Yep. All right, this was written 3 days ago by Matt Binder. Cloudflare suffered a major outage on November 18th, and I told you all about that. And it took many major platforms down with it. We're talking worldwide. OpenAI, Spotify, X, and Canva were among just some of the websites and services that went down on Tuesday morning. Now, on the East Coast, here I am. It only lasted about 5 hours, and it was all in the morning. By the afternoon, it was all fixed. Feel like you're experiencing deja vu? Well, you're not. The recent Cloudflare outage is not to be confused with the recent Microsoft Azure outage. That was the last one, which resulted in Xbox, Minecraft, and other platforms going down. And don't forget the other major incident that occurred in October when issues at Amazon Web Services, AWS, which is the biggest, and Microsoft Azure is the second biggest, led to Amazon, Reddit, Snapchat, and other big platforms going offline. It's also completely separate from the June outage when Google Cloud Platform, I think that's the third biggest, and Cloudflare took down swaths of the internet. Okay, so the internet's biggest websites and platforms have been going down a lot lately. What's going on here? Why do so many websites go down at the same time? Because we're tied into the same cloud. That's why. Those big social media cloud platforms, e-commerce websites, and gaming networks are all using the same few major service providers, and that's the problem here, to host and deliver their content, with Cloudflare being one of them. And the four that are named in this article, I think, are the four biggest in the world. So naturally, they're taking down hundreds or thousands of websites. Cloudflare is one of the largest content delivery networks, which is a system that manages web traffic. When Cloudflare functions normally, it manages web traffic and protects platforms from attacks. CDNs are distributed infrastructures that accelerate content delivery and enhance user experience by caching and serving web content closer to users, explained Angelique Medina, head of Internet Intelligence at the network intelligence company Cisco Thousand Eyes, to Mashable. I heard of Cisco, never heard of Cisco Thousand Eyes. They essentially serve as the front door to websites and applications, with users connecting to Cloudflare's servers instead of those of its customers. When this front door becomes unavailable, users lose the entry point to many sites and applications. So it's like somebody shut the door and you can't open it. Given the large number of customers and sites that they service, any meaningful disruption in their ability to deliver content could effectively render large parts of the internet unreachable to users, which is exactly what happened on Tuesday. Basically, the internet has consolidated, and we're all reaping the rewards of that consolidation. Yeah, because we're all using these 4 or 5 big ones, and this is what happens. This isn't just another technical setback, said Ramute Varnelte, I'm guessing. That's the best I can do. CEO of IPXO, a leading IP resource management platform in Europe, in a statement provided to Mashable. It's further proof of how exposed the digital economy is to various malfunctions in just a few of the digital infrastructure service providers. So he's saying, because so many of us are on these few, this is what happens. And he's right. Are internet outages occurring more frequently? Actually, no. Back in the earlier days of the internet, there were countless web hosting providers, and many companies even ran their own dedicated service. So, of course, you didn't have this problem of hundreds or thousands going down at once. But, of course, that's very expensive for every little company. Now, companies big and small are all utilizing the same few cloud service providers, whether it be AWS, GCP, or Azure. Cloudflare makes the internet even more vulnerable to disruption, as the company has no one-to-one direct competitor. So they're it. So they're what everybody uses, I gather. The incident further emphasizes the inherent danger of the entire internet infrastructure relying on a few service providers, you think? But is that it? And are those services really going down more than usual? According to Cisco Thousand Eyes, which tracks outages and maps them, that's correct. Web downtime is actually not happening more than usual, even if it seems that way. Yes, just these biggies are getting nailed. Cisco Thousand Eyes has not seen an increase in the frequency of service outages in cloud and other internet infrastructure providers. However, the number of sites and applications dependent on these services has increased because these services are increasingly a point of centralization. Absolutely. With a small number of companies handling large swaths of the internet. If something goes wrong, it can lead to the disruption of many sites and applications around the globe, which we found already 4 times this year. In short, the number of disruptions isn't increasing. Rather, the shock waves of individual incidents are getting bigger because we're all on these fields. So just an interesting article in case anybody thinks this is happening more often. No, it's not happening more often. It's just that we're all on these few and this is what happens. Now, keep in mind, in every single case, something inadvertent happened, something they didn't expect, or a developer made a mistake. So this is all stuff that should be fixable. So hopefully it won't happen again, or at least for the most part. So just interesting stuff. So nothing else new in the comments. So it's going to be a quick night because it's just me, folks. Let me get it. We got my green tea. Okay. Another interesting one, I thought. Consumer poll response, Material 3 expensive or liquid glass? Got this on the Android Authority, so let's go take a look. Liquid glass or Material 3 expensive? Survey reveals landslide winner. Now keep in mind, we are on Android Authority, which should give you a little hint, but still. Android and iOS both have new looks in 2025, but there's only one winner in your book. And when they say your book, they're talking about the people who follow this site. And keep in mind, it's an Android site. So let's drop into Reader View. Get rid of these ads. Are you going to drop into Reader View? You're going to give me, okay, there we go. This was written by Hadley Simmons 3 days ago. Android and iOS have both received visual overhauls in 2025. Android 16's QPR1 update brought the Material 3 expressive style to Pixel phones, while iOS 26 offered the liquid glass aesthetic. And I have one on my Pixel 10 and one on my iPhone 17. So I've already gotten used to both. But I guess a lot of people aren't crazy about liquid glass, or that's what I've seen in a number of places. Colleague Rita El-Khoury felt that developers were treating Material 3 expressive like an afterthought, but were quick to adopt liquid glass styling. So they were adopting the iPhone so quick, but the developers, but not the Material 3. Nevertheless, we want to know which visual style you preferred, so we posted a poll inside Reader's article. Here's how you voted. Liquid glass or Material 3 expressive? Pick one. This was a very popular poll with over 6,500 votes tallied as of writing. That is a lot. It turns out that the top choice by a landslide was Material 3 expressive, as 78.7% respondents chose this over liquid glass. Now, keep in mind, we're on an Android site, so that makes a lot of difference, I'm sure. But when liquid glass first came out on the iPhone 17, a lot of people didn't like it. So, and there's Brian being Brian. Thank you for your faithfulness, sir. Always appreciated. Okay, I'm not going to get this name right. Reader Chengguan USB, okay, decried app developers bringing Apple's aesthetic to Android as well. Telegram started testing liquid glass in Android. It was so bad. I'm sure it probably was. Otherwise, some users in the comments rightfully noted the difficulty in having one consistent design language to Android when so many Android skins exist, and most of them are already copying liquid glass. They're not wrong either, as skins like Samsung One UI, Oxygen OS, and Pixel UI all differ greatly from one another. It seems like most of the Chinese phones that ones copying liquid glass a lot, which would include Oxygen OS, of course. Meanwhile, 21.3% of surveyed readers chose liquid glass over material to be expressive. So I wonder if you took this to an iOS site, you'd probably get a big difference the other way. Nobody praised Apple's aesthetics in the comments. That's not a surprise given our Android focus and readership, exactly. But it still drives home the divisive nature of this visual style. Yeah, a lot of people didn't like it when it first came out. If anything, we've got a few comments lamenting both Apple and Google's new visual styling, such as this one from Rita. Oh, yeah, you got bad, disapproving comments on both. I don't like both as it's made my device UI heavier. I need speed, quick accents, and performance, not beauty where it doesn't belong. Rita RZMiu93 reader also echoed this sentiment. Never liked the material's design. It looks boring and outdated. Liquid glass is also trash. What the F do I need borders which move around icons and widgets? Why do I need that transparency? Yeah, a lot of people don't like the transparency. Making a mess of the UI by seeing the component below. But a lot of companies are copying it, though. It's interesting. Previous Apple design was better than both. In any event, this survey suggests that Google should double down on the material to expressive and ensure that third-party app developers are embracing the aesthetic. And I guess that's the problem. Developers aren't using it much. So, interesting survey. And like I said, it's probably the vast majority of Android people taking the survey. So you can see why they got the results they did. But it was interesting. Okay. Nothing else new. After 12 years, Meta's chief AI scientist leaves to embark on his own venture. I found the story on the BBC. Well, I took it from the BBC, but it was in a lot of other places too. Why an AI godfather, that's what they consider him, is quitting Meta after 12 years. This is 2 days ago by Liv McMahon. So where are we going here? Let's drop into reader view. Cool. Just a couple of weeks ago, one of the godfathers of artificial intelligence was in St. James Palace, this was in London, or in England, being handed an award from King Charles for his work in artificial intelligence. Professor Yann LeCun was being honored along with 6 other recipients for his contributions to the field, which have been credited as advancing deep learning. And of course, that's him. Together, he's highly well known, especially in the AI world, which makes sense. But Mr. LeCun is at odds with some of the AI world over the future of the generation-defining technology. He doesn't agree with some of the things being said. And now he's going all in on his idea of advanced machine intelligence after announcing he is leaving his role as Meta's chief AI scientist to start a new firm. During his 12 years at the company, Professor LeCun won the prestigious Turing Award and witnessed several flurries of excitement around AI, not least the most recent boom in generative AI accelerated by rival OpenAI's launch of ChatGPT in late 2022. Yeah, that's what kind of got what got it on everybody's radar. But his departure comes amid speculation the AI boom could meet an abrupt end should the so-called AI bubble, and you've been seeing stories from me and others about that, of ballooning valuations and soaring spending burst. Just like the dot-com burst back in the early 2000s, a lot of people think this is going to burst. Investors, analysts, and even big tech bosses like Google's chief executive Sundar Pichai have said a market correction to the AI sector would ripple across the wider economy. So people are expecting this bubble to burst, I guess sooner than later, because we keep seeing stories about it, and we're seeing more and more stories about it. what LeCun thinks the AI world gets wrong. So keep in mind, this guy is a leader in this stuff, but here's where they all disagree. Professor LeCun announced his planned departure from Meta on Wednesday after more than a week of rumors and reports of his exit. In a series of posts on Threads, he thanked the company's founder, Mark Zuckerberg, and highlighted its fundamental AI research fair lab as his proudest non-technical accomplishment. As many of you have heard through rumors or recent media articles, I am planning to leave Meta after 12 years, 5 years as founding director of FAIR, and 7 years as chief AI scientist, he wrote. The impact of FAIR on the company, on the field of AI, on the tech community, and on the wider world has been spectacular. The lab has, over the years, focused on developing systems and techniques to advance machine learning and translation. But like large parts of the sector, Meta has looked to concentrate much of the company's research and spending on large language models. And I gather this is where he disagrees a little. LLMs, the system at the heart of generative AI tools such as chatbots and image generators. And you guys should know that, yes, LLMs drive what they call generative AI. And generative AI sounds good, and it draws investors who will give money. And I was watching a video the other day from a lady who works in the business, and her whole point was nobody can even definitively tell you what generative AI really means. And she's right about that. But it does sell if you use it enough. And she's saying all this is overblown. So let's get back to Professor LeCun. Professor LeCun has suggested LLMs will be less useful in attempting to create AI systems that can match human intelligence. Couldn't agree more. Instead, because LLM, large language models, they just search and find matching stuff. That's all they do. They don't think. They're probably never going to think. And yes, I think like a developer because I was a programmer for years. So I tend to agree with these people. Instead, he wants to pursue what he called advanced machine intelligence. So this is his area of expertise. It trains AI models primarily by using visual learning, trying to replicate how a child or a baby animal learns, which makes sense. Babies learn by seeing visually. That differs to LLMs, which are fed vast amounts of existing data and then asked to generate a result based on the data in a prompt. Yeah, because LLMs, they just match things up as they search. And yes, they can search incredibly fast, but that's all they're doing. Professor LeCun will still have a relationship with Meta once he sets up his new company. He said, adding in post about his departure, it would be a partner of his new firm. So Meta will have something to do with his new company. But reports suggest he has been increasingly moving away from the approach the company wants to take, so he disagrees with. Unlike his fellow AI godfathers, Geoffrey Hinton and Yeshua Bengio, Professor LeCun has cast doubt on the idea AI might pose an existential threat to humanity. I totally agree with him. I think that the whole thing's ridiculous. Terminator is a movie. This is not a movie. In 2023, he called such fears preposterously ridiculous. I agree with him 100%. Will AI take over the world? No, this is not. No, this is a projection of human nature on machines, he told the BBC. Yeah, this is a projection of people making money with AI. But some have also questioned Professor LeCun's characterization as an outlier or visionary in the industry. Now get this. Yann LeCun has, without a doubt, made genuine contributions to AI, and I am pleased to see him speak out against the limits on LLMs, said AI expert and Professor Gary Marcus in a recent blog. But he has also systematically dismissed and ignored the work of others for years. I guess whose work he's ignoring? He added, including himself, among those whose work he suggested Professor LeCun had overlooked. So am I going to take his opinion? Probably not. So anyway, just an interesting article. I gather he's leaving to kind of go his own way because he's not so sold on the whole large language model thing. So good for him. And I'm going to suspect he's going to end up being proven right. And Ted dropped in. Glad you're here. I wish you'd come by. He's saying bye, LeCun. Well, I'm sure we'll hear about him again. He said, hi, Brian Oliver. Brian said, what up, Ted? Okay. At least you dropped in. All right, I got 2 more stories left. All right, one more drink of my green tea. I hope you guys are finding these stories interesting. Like I say, I try to find interesting, but stuff you haven't heard everywhere. Okay. The MacBook Air M1, the Apple Silicon verdict 5 years on. So just had its anniversary. Got this on Tech Radar. And like I said, I have the MacBook Air M1. And I'm very happy with it. So Lance Ulanoff was there from the very beginning 5 years ago. The first Apple Silicon MacBook Air M1 is 5, and it really did change everything. Yes, Lance Ulanoff published on the 17th, so 4 days ago. Apple Silicon did not disappoint. Let's go into review. So Lance really knows what he's talking about here. 5 years ago, I unboxed and reviewed my first Apple Silicon laptop, the MacBook Air M1. That laptop and SoC would change the course of laptop history, especially MacBook history, and my own computing experience. And he's not kidding. It all started, though, with the announcement. It's been 5 breakneck years since Apple unveiled Apple Silicon during its first virtual, remember we were under a pandemic, WWDC keynote amid a global pandemic. Even without the visceral onstage moment of CEO Tim Cook emerging from the shadows to unveil a huge helping of Apple platform excitement, this was momentous. And it really was with the M1. One world, one universe, one platform unification. Apple's momentous Worldwide Developers Conference keynote just painted a picture of a world in which the walls come down, and from the silicon underneath to the pixels in front of your face, Apple's ecosystem becomes one. Apple switching hardware platforms was not unheard of. After all, only 14 years earlier, it had migrated systems from IBM and Motorola's PowerPC to PCell, and that would have been a big change too. This time, though, was different. Like an A student preparing for finals, Apple was deeply prepped for this new transition. It used Xcode to rewrite all its first-party apps and work with major partners like Microsoft and Adobe to ensure that core third-party apps were able to run on the revolutionary new hardware. There had to be a lot of testing involved in that. There was even a developer's transition kit ready to go for app partners, and they were very successful because I remember when they unveiled this stuff. Rosetta 2, a software compatibility layer, was also released, promising to ease the transition for non-ARM ready apps. Silicon Promise. Back then, I was well aware of the potential benefits of a 5 nanometer power savings platform. Yeah, but that was a big deal in those days. It was the holy grail of mobile computing, one that Microsoft had already approached, though less successfully, with Windows on ARM on the Surface 10 Pro, which ran on the SQ2 chip. Apple Silicon would transform MacBooks from decent battery performance to 17-hour marathoners. That's pretty good. Pardon me. I had my concerns about the integrated graphics, but also knew that graphics performance on Apple's bespoke A-series chips on the iPhone and iPad was always stellar, so I had reason to hope. I saw the potential, writing, what Apple's doing is switching all its systems from running on a variety of fuels like wind, solar, and gas to just one that might arguably be described as rocket fuel. And they were pretty successful with that. And yet I had no intention of switching from Windows to Mac. So here's where it became a big deal for him. I had my reasons. It's not that I was unfamiliar with the Mac. I'd used the OG Macintosh in the 1980s. I didn't realize he was that old. But switched for good to Windows when I joined PC Mag in the early 1990s. So he's been in this business for a very long time. Windows was for me like an old but beloved car. It could be clunky and even sometimes break down in the middle of the road, but I knew every control and contour. It molded to me and I a bit to it. I knew its foibles, but I also knew how to work around them. That no Windows laptop could ever give me more than 5 hours of battery life, yeah, big difference, on a good day was something I accepted, along with the fact that I felt like the blue screen of death was always lurking around some unforeseen corner. And back in the 80s and 90s, that was true for all of us. Barely 5 months after the announcement, and developers got their hands on the transition kit, which, among other things, helped them build universal apps for all systems running Apple Silicon. And I gather that whole thing was very successful and went smooth. So Apple did a great job. I reviewed the first Apple MacBook Air with the M1 chip. I called it an astonishing breakthrough. A lot of people did. Benchmarks made a mockery of even Intel Core i7 systems, which is what I'm on right here, with this Ryzen chip. But and I bought this one because it had an i7, but this was way faster, especially in the area of integrated graphics. Battery life was incredible, ranging between 15 and 20 hours. I knew intuitively that such a system could transform my life, and it did. Even so, the idea of switching from Windows to Mac OS was daunting. I think I worried that with time I might discover that most of my key apps didn't work on Apple Silicon, or that Apple wouldn't meet its 2-year deadline of fully transitioning away from Intel, and that it might even abandon the project altogether and return to Intel. And I think none of that happened, so I'd say Apple just did a great job. I needn't have worried. By 2023, even the MacBook Pro had switched to an M2 Ultra. I was impressed with Apple's innovative approach to producing even more powerful Apple Silicon chips, often by clustering them together. That's right, they did. The M2 Ultra really is a 2 M2 Max chips. That's right. That's what they did the following year at their presentation. What's more, I never found an app that wouldn't run on Apple Silicon, which is pretty amazing. And you can tell it was 2020 because he still got the mask on. Making the change in what might have been. I guess this was the actual, okay, this is the M2, so this would have been 2021, I guess. First time I touched a MacBook Air M2 until I started using it permanently. So he really switched off Windows entirely. That's a big change. 3 years into the Apple Silicon journey, I switched to the M2 MacBook, so that would have been 2022. MacBook Air, and documented the effort in a journal. There were some struggles, but almost all of them revolved around long-standing differences between Mac OS and Windows. I was forced to learn many new keyboard commands and shortcuts, which makes perfect sense. 2 weeks into my journey, I wrote, becoming such a second nature to use the Mac. Will I ever go back? Spoiler alert, I never did. See, I never got that far. I enjoy my MacBook Air, but I always go back to my Windows. If Apple had failed to deliver on the Apple Silicon promise it made on June 22, 2020, this would have been a different story, one that might more closely resemble Apple Intelligence. Yeah, we don't want a story like that. The fact that it made the effort early on to make the hard stuff look easy, great job. Supporting all those apps, making different platform apps work on different systems, making it rock solid stable, that's great. and providing industry-leading efficiency put the wind at Apple Silicon's back. And keep in mind, as a developer, all this is very impressive to me that you can switch to systems like that and everything is still working. Apple showed immediate commitment by unveiling the MacBook Air M1 along with an iMac and Mac Mini in those first 6 months. Apple has never looked back and continues to build and innovate on the Apple Silicon platform to deliver more powerful mobile CPUs. They just keep getting more powerful. It's only in the last year or so that with the help of Qualcomm, the Windows world has started to catch up, nearly matching Apple Silicon in performance, efficiency, and stability. Apple Silicon changed the computing world, but it also changed me. I walked away from a platform I love and still have affection for, the Windows, and have not looked back. Apple's market share has grown on the back of Apple Silicon, and at least in that Mac space, I think the best is yet to come. Well, that would be impressive. So I just thought, great story, and the entire article points out what a great job Apple did in switching, and it did, I gather, very smoothly. So pretty impressive stuff. All right, my last story. I have nothing else new. With encryption becoming a hotter and hotter topic, and we keep having stories about it, especially in the EU. 61 worldwide tech organizations asked governments to protect it. Remember, Britain tried to force Apple to put a back door in, and Apple finally said no, and Britain pulled back their request. But none of these governments are going to stop trying to get around the encryption. Over 60 organizations, this was on Tech Radar, over 60 organizations call on governments worldwide to protect encryption. This is written by Monica White 3 days ago. Signatories call encryption vital as pressure for backdoors grows. So all these governments are trying to put more and more pressure, but they don't want us to have any privacy ever. A total of 61 organizations from across the tech industry and the privacy world have signed a new global statement urging governments to protect strong encryption. Shared by ACT, the App Association, I never heard of that. The statement notes that weakening encrypted services threatens both security and the digital economy, you think? The letter arrives amid mounting political pressure against encrypted communications worldwide, especially in the EU, where the debate around the chat control bill keeps intensifying. Yeah, they keep trying to push it through. So far, they haven't succeeded, but they keep getting closer, I gather. Various proposals for encryption backdoors introduce an extra element of vulnerability, that's for sure. Experts warn, and there's no way to make sure that these vulnerabilities won't be exploited later. Yeah, because hackers are probably smarter than the people that are doing this. Among the signatories is the VPN Trust Initiative, which is a consortium representing many of the best VPN providers. VPNs have also been targeted by some governments as part of these recent efforts. Yeah, because VPNs stop these governments from seeing what you're doing, and they don't like that. Strong encryption is essential. The global statement highlights how important encryption is throughout so many aspects of our digital lives. The letter notes that encryption safeguards user privacy, protects sensitive data, and enables trust. All of those are referred to as foundations of commerce, communication, and innovation. Without encryption, users are much less likely to use various apps with full confidence. Knowing that your data or your private conversations might be subject to surveillance or data leaks means that many of the more privacy-conscious users might be left with no secure options for communication. The letter notes that undermining encryption through things like backdoors or key escrow systems weakens the trust. Oh, I had to look up what key escrow systems is. That's where they hire a third party to look at stuff to get around the encryption. So bad idea either way. Like backdoors or key escrow systems weakens the trust users have in various digital services, as it should. It also affects the digital economy and small businesses. More than that, it introduces systemic vulnerabilities that's unavoidable. You can't create a flaw in the system and only let law enforcement use it. Cyber criminals are highly likely to find their way in too. That's for absolute sure. The coalition recognizes that governments and national security agencies need to be able to access evidence and fight crime, but it notes that it should be done through ways that do not compromise the safety and privacy of billions of consumers and enterprise users. Couldn't agree more. Signatories include some of the biggest organizations across tech and data privacy, including the VPN Trust Initiative. This organization is led by founding members like ExpressVPN, NordVPN, and ViperVPN. In other words, the biggest there are. Set industry standards for VPN providers. Encrypted data is in constant danger. The call to protect encryption lands against a backdrop of attempts by governments to gain access to encrypted data. Yeah, they keep forcing the issue. This is especially prevalent in the EU, where several recent proposals have raised alarm among privacy experts. The EU Commission presented a new roadmap in June this year seeking to establish a way for law enforcement to access citizens' private data by 2020. They don't want any of us to have any private data. And they keep coming up with reworded ways to try to get it through. But the people who are against this, they're not going to be fooled by you changing the way you say it. Previously, end-to-end encryption was highlighted as the biggest technical challenge, and tools like VPN services and encrypted chat apps were both seen as a threat to effective investigative work. Yeah, but if it's not, then you take away everybody's security and privacy. European lawmakers are also pushing the chat control proposal, which could introduce client-side scanning. This would involve scanning private chats on the device before it ever gets encrypted. Yeah, so they want to see it before you even are allowed to encrypt it. But then you might as well not encrypt anything. The latest chat control proposal has now received broad support from EU lawmakers and has reportedly moved to the next legislative step. So they're getting closer and closer. It's taking them years to do it. Not every law enforcement representative agrees with this thing, thank God. James A. Baker, this surprised me, former general counsel of the U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation, said encryption is vital to law enforcement to protect society. Couldn't agree with him more. He also referred to client-side scanning as a fundamentally bad idea. He's absolutely right about that. So the fight will continue to go on, but I just think I should bring you these stories because eventually they're going to try to take away everybody's privacy in the entire world. And they mean to do it. Like I said, the EU is trying to get it done by 2030. So I just thought you guys should always be aware of these stories. So that's all I've got for tonight, folks. Hopefully you found the stories interesting, and I hope you guys have a blessed and wonderful weekend and a blessed week next week. And I'm going to remind you again, next Friday is Black Friday, and it's going to be on Mike's Simply Your Device channel. I'll make a note on my channel probably Sunday to remind you guys. I'll make another note on Wednesday, I think, to remind you guys again. So next Friday, 8 o'clock, don't look for Mobile Geezer. Go to Simply Your Device, Mike's channel. If anything happens by some emergency, if it's not there, just come here. Because I'm sure something would have happened at the last minute. But we know Mike loves to do this every year. So Simply Your Device next week. And let's, as I always tell you guys, let's always remember we all do better when we love each other. So I'm going to leave you as usual with, come on, people now. Smile on your brother. Everybody get together. Try to love one another right now. Good night, folks.